So I just got off some California overnighters, and I want to give you my overnighter advice. This is advice for class 5+ overnighters, fantasy, Clark's Fork box. It's not advice for the, rafting, chill rafting overnighters, desert flow trips, Grand Canyon. This is class 5+. I'll go over gear, mindset, and training. We'll start with gear. I think it is the least important for advice, but that's what everybody wants to hear. Number one, buy a nice sleeping bag, lightweight and warm. If you're going to spend money, that's the place to do it. Everything else can be very cheap. If they can get ludicrously expensive brand new, if you're going through an outdoorsy city like Denver, these can be found used on Facebook Marketplace for like $200 to $400. You want something with a temperature rating. This one has a temperature rating of like 23 Fahrenheit. Note they rate the temperature for if you're wearing a lot of clothes. So you'll want something in the 20 to 25 Fahrenheit range. This will keep you warm at the high altitudes. Sleeping pads, I go super simple. I go one of these accordion foam sleeping pads. It has the downside of being significantly less comfortable than the inflatable sleeping pad. However, it has numerous upsides, which is that it doesn't need a dry bag. You can just get it fully wet and it'll drip dry in minutes. So that saves you some space, and you can just put it straight on the ground. You can put it on thorns. It can't pop, and you can kind of fold it halfway up like this and use it as a seat. So just the fact that it can't pop, it can't break, means that to me it's the superior sleeping pad for overnight setups compared to inflatable at the expense of less comfort. As far as shelter in California, if you're going in the summer, so like June, July, August, meaning it's a decent snow year, all I bring is one of these super chintzy, thin tarps. I use it as a ground tarp, and if needed, I can string it up in my safety kit. I carry some little twine. Could use a throw rope. You can use like your breakdown paddle or your 2-piece Lettman paddle or some sticks or whatever to set it up in case. The weather in California is super nice, so you probably won't have storms. I just sleep under the stars. Most people I know also sleep under the stars. I think other acceptable sleeping systems besides just sleeping on the ground on a pad and bringing an emergency tarp would be a hammock. Those are super lightweight. I just can't sleep in a hammock. Hammocks can have built-in bug nets, which is really nice, and you can have a tarp over it so you stay dry. The other one that's pretty common is a bug net bivy. So it's a bivy sack, which surrounds your sleeping bag, but it's just made of bug net material. Keeps the bugs off you. There has been a time that I slept on a fire ant's nest, and I wish I had the bug net bivy, but I just keep it super lightweight. You'll notice a trend, which is that we're incredibly minimalistic with packing. Everybody on these overnighters packs extremely minimal. Like my entire sleeping setup is just lightweight tarp that I use as a ground tarp for emergencies, to set up for rain, nice lightweight sleeping bag that's warm, foam sleeping pad. I bring a luxury. The fact that I consider one of these inflatable pillows a luxury should be telling for how minimalistic people pack for California. I like it, but you can also forego it and like sleep on your skirt or PFD or something. The other two luxuries that I'll sometimes bring would be a lightweight beanie, just nice to stay warm at camp. Again, this is a luxury. And a puffy jacket. Puffy jacket's definitely nice to stay warm, but you can drape your sleeping bag over your shoulder, so I consider a luxury too. Forgo these to save weight. Many people do. Dry bags to keep your stuff dry. I recommend the Walmart dry bag, the one that looks like this, the roll style. They are actually quite dry. They are they were like $10 when I bought them years ago. They're probably more expensive now, but compared to name brands, they are super cheap. You want a dry bag, in my experience, that's made of this type of material, this thicker plasticky thing. This like NRS dry bag is made of the same material. This one is dry too. The ones that are made of the thinner, more lightweight material are, in my experience, not dry. So I would avoid those and just stick with the Walmart dry bag. I'll cut to a tip now for showing you how to load up your dry bag in your boat. There's a way I like to use that makes it way better. All right, so here's my creek boat. I'm outside with my dry bag. Now what a lot of people do is they stuff their stuff, like their sleeping bag, in their dry bag, and then they shove it in the boat. They shove it way in the back of the boat, as far back as they can, but you actually want the weight to be as close to the seat as possible. So what I like to do is I first put my dry bag in the boat, empty. Now, once the dry bag is in the boat, then you can take your stuff and start to stuff it in here. This means that your dry bag will stay close and up front, and I think it helps pack the dry bag a little better. You don't have to fit it in this tiny hole once it's already full. You'll notice that the boat is shorter at the cockpit rim than behind it, so if you stuff your stuff in your dry bag enough to fit through this hole, you'll actually be wasting some of the space, and you could have had your gear closer to your seat, so affecting your boat performance less. The other thing I recommend if you do that is to, when you take your dry bag out, you'll notice I've taped this up. This is a rip. It's because I was stuffing my dry bag like that and then just pulling it out and ripping this black edge, which is meant to roll the dry bag and keep it dry from the material. So pull the stuff out of the dry bag first, like pull your sleeping bag out of your dry bag, and then take your dry bag out, and that'll save your dry bag from ripping like that. The other thing is that boats have these like loops behind your seat, or even just something like this, or this on the back of the back band. Clip your dry bags to your boat. You do not want to swim and lose all your stuff and have like a million dry bags floating down the river. Clip your dry bags and all your stuff into your boat so that if you swim, people only have to get your boat, which is the biggest, you know, lightest colored, easiest to see thing. You don't want your dry bags floating everywhere. All right, cooking setup. This is going to be a bit controversial, but I just bring a pot. I bring a super lightweight, kind of nasty aluminum pot, and I cook it directly on the fire. You can see that the pot, it screws up your pot, so definitely don't buy an expensive pot. I don't even filter the water that I cook with out in, you know, Wyoming and Colorado. These overnight rivers have such clean water that you can just boil it when you cook your stuff, and it's all good. I use like my river knife or a stick to pick the pot up. I don't have pot grabbers. I don't have anything. Everything gets cooked in this pot. I don't bring utensils either. I just eat with a river knife and a stick if I need. I will say that if this sounds very minimalistic to you, this is what most people I know do on overnighters. They are this minimalistic. Weight matters a lot, especially if you're hiking. Breakdown paddle. I think this is self-evident. For most rivers, like let's say Fantasy or the Black Canyon, maybe one breakdown paddle per 2 people is probably sufficient. For rivers where you expect to be sending bigger waterfalls and stuff, like Royal Gorge, probably 1 breakdown per person if everybody wants to run the stuff. Okay, your watershed. Most people use the Walmart dry bags for their sleeping bag and tarp and that kind of thing, you know, puffy and hat if you decide to bring it. And then they use their watershed, sits on their lap for their stuff for the day. So that, in my case, I have my safety kit in here, but that could also be like your lunch, water filter, camera if you got it. The watershed dry bags are the only truly 100% dry bags. So if you really demand 100% dry, they make large watershed bags that you can use instead of the Walmart bags. I'll show you what's in the safety kit here. So I carry a bit more twine. This is like multi-purpose, I feel, and it weighs almost nothing. Some of it I use to tie up the breakdown paddle. You want your breakdown paddle tied into your boat. I don't love this tape solution. I think most people use like a mesh bag, but whatever you do, don't let this float around. Contain your breakdown paddle in your boat. All right, first I always have an emergency snack bar. This never leaves, just in case someone gets hurt or you're stuck overnight without food. It's nice to have. I carry actually 2 emergency blankets. They weigh so little that I think it's worth having, and they kind of shred on rocks easily, so useful, warm, good to have. I carry super glue and the associated things. Super glue can be used to fix most things, and it can also be used in place of stitches. You can glue someone together if they have a big cut. It's probably not doctor recommended, but in a pinch, if you have to do it, it will do. So I think this is a good safety thing, and again, it weighs very little. This is bituthane. It is roofing tar on this side, and then like aluminum foil on this side. Bituthane is the affectionate name that kayakers know this by. It's actually called something like butadiene, but it's roofing tar. You can buy it in rolls. This is super useful for patching boats if they crack. You can't really weld a boat on a fire, I am sorry to say. I have tried it, many people I know have tried it, and very, very few, if any, have ever succeeded. This thing, you can just cut it over the crack, don't even bother welding the crack, slap it on the crack, and then heat it up. You want to put the black side on the boat and then heat it up with your lighter. You want to get it like bubbly hot so that when you squeeze it, you want to press it down, squeeze it. It should squeeze out the side a little bit, and then it will be extremely sticky and keep your crack dry. Do it on the inside of the boat if at all possible. But basically, this is for if you crack your boat. Super key. It weighs almost nothing, too. Here, this, I keep a sewing kit, actually. So if I had to sew up a skirt, or maybe even literally sew up a bigger thing than could be fixed with super glue, someone was really cut, which I wouldn't expect. Mostly for the skirt. I carry the sewing kit. Could sew together a dry suit or something too, and then fix it with super glue or whatever. And then this is, the bag is a little bit abnormal, but it's moleskin, basically. It's for blisters. So some of these big hike-ins, I figure having just lightweight pieces for blisters, if you had to keep hiking, would be good. Wouldn't blame you for leaving that one out. This is just generalized Band-Aids, antiseptic pads, and that kind of stuff. Pretty normal. Medicines here. I carry quite a bit of medicine, actually. Benadryl. Benadryl is super useful if you're having an allergic reaction. You should look this up exactly how to do this, but basically give someone too much Benadryl and it can save their life if they're having an allergic reaction. Or if you just get stung by a bee and you have a normal, allergic reaction, Benadryl's pretty nice. More antibiotic stuff in case you get a cut. Again, the water's pretty clean, but pays to be careful. These are butterfly bandages. They can close more tightly like a really bad cut. So again, for the small weight, this is a CPR face mask. Unfortunately, we sometimes have to do CPR in kayaking. This is acetaminophen, and this is ibuprofen. They can be stacked. In other words, you can take the maximum allowed dosage of both of them, and since they activate via different pathways in your body, you can get extra pain-killing effect without overdosing. So painkiller is pretty important. And then I keep my iodine tablets. Iodine is my preferred way to purify water on the river because unlike a pump, unlike a filter, iodine can't break. As long as this stays dry and you have a water bottle, it will work. The downside is you have iodine taste in your water. They do make other kinds of tablets. You can even get it at Walmart that you do the iodine, you let it sit for half an hour, and that's the other downside, is it needs to sit. So you got to wait, you got to do this ahead of time. Then after it's purified, you put the other tablets in, and it more or less neutralizes the taste. I don't mind. At the beginning of lunch or whatever, I'll just pop these out, and then I have to wait to drink my water. I've seen all kinds of pumps break. The physical pumps, they break and they're heavy, so I wouldn't recommend that. Gravity filters, where it's basically a bag and then a filter, and the force of gravity forces the water through the filter. Those seem to not break too much because there's very little force applied, but they take forever, so you might as well just use iodine. The iodine will take some time, but it's way lighter and easier. The squeeze filters seem to work good, except they break a lot. They break at the seam between the bag and the filter that you squeeze it through. I've seen a lot of people break squeeze filters. Maybe they were just overzealous, but the one kind of filter that I see people use that I actually like is the built-in water bottle filter. That way they don't have to wait. They can just dip the water bottle into the river whenever they want and drink straight from the filter. Again, this advice of just iodine or just the bottle filter is very California or, Wyoming, U.S. West centric, where the water in these rivers is quite clear. If you're going to like Pakistan, where the water was incredibly silty, call somebody else, because my advice is not going to apply. But the water bottle filter is good. And then for cooking, again, I just boil the water, so I don't even filter it. I carry some like gauze and stuff, so if I had to wrap someone up, and this would work as emergency fire starter because it's quite dry. The last thing I carry in my safety kit is inReach, so a satellite phone. The new iPhones will work if they have satellite messaging capability. Just make sure to turn off crash detection, because when you go kayaking, that will count as a crash and call 911. I keep my inReach inside of a separate dry box inside of my watershed, because I have seen someone fail to burp the watershed, as in they closed it full of air, and then they swam. The pressure of the air inside the watershed exploded it, shorted out, got into their inReach, shorted it out, and it called the helicopter when we didn't want it. So I just do the separate dry box inside just in case. I've also got here a tip for you for your watershed. Let me balance the camera. So sometimes they can get stuck like this, where like you can't close it together. So you just spit on your finger and then rub it on the inside of one of the seams, and then look at this, closes right up. Easy peasy. The other tip I got for you is when you're opening your watershed, I see a lot of people just pull, and you got to pull quite hard, and then these things tear off. So what you want to do actually is take these, and instead of pulling straight out, you'll go like this. You see that nice S shape? So you're pulling this one up, and this one down, and it makes that nice S shape, and it opens right up super easy. Saves these things from breaking. Okay, other gear that you might need, depending on if you're doing a hiking in California, is a backpack system. They make commercial backpack systems. You can make your own backpack system with an NRS strap and these pool noodles. I'll link some tutorials. Since I just copy what they do, I'm not going to repeat it because they know better than me. But the one thing you have to do is to duct tape, or in this case, Gorilla Tape, the ends of your pool noodles like this. You can see the strap tries to pull through the end of the pool noodle, and if you don't have the tape, it'll just split your entire pool noodle. I recommend the pool noodle backpack system the most because it's lightweight, and I've had a commercial backpack system break on me in the Middle Kings, and I had to shoulder the rest of the hike. For shorter hikes than the Middle Kings, I actually think shouldering is a reasonable way to go. Like say the West Cherry hike-in, even the long West Cherry hike-in. And that's for the reason that the backpack systems don't work downhill. The boat is too long and it will smack the rocks or the stairs or whatever you're walking on as you go downhill. So even on like the Middle Kings hike-in, everybody that had a backpack, the last like 2,000 vertical feet, they just shouldered it because it's impossible to walk downhill. So you're shouldering downhill anyways. And shouldering, the benefit is that it's easier to take your boat off to rest. If you have a backpack, you kind of just have to awkwardly wall sit against your kayak. The other downside to the pool noodle system is it doesn't really put any weight on your hips. You can try to do it. I've never succeeded. The commercial systems do that, but again, they're heavier and they don't work in my opinion. Like they just broke. I had one of the hip pads just rip out, so it just wasn't usable. So I'd say keep it simple with the NRS strap and pool noodles, or shoulder if it's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 mile hike. Food, all right. Backpacker meals, which I don't have here, are the obvious ones, and they weren't good. They are very expensive, though, and I'll warn you that one backpacker meal is not going to be enough food for you. You will be unbelievably hungry, like you've never really been before. So you're going to want a backpacker meal plus, one of these potatoes. These are lightweight, dehydrated potatoes, plus, candy bar, or plus, backpacker meal plus potatoes plus beef jerky, or, backpacker meal plus ramen noodles, a couple of nut, mix snack packs, that kind of stuff. If the backpacker meals are too expensive for you, these green rice sides or pasta sides, they work great. They don't have quite the amount of calories. This one has like 600, so it's almost as much as a backpacker meal, but not quite. 2 of these, plus the potatoes, and you'll be pretty full. And these are way cheaper. The backpacker meals are like $12, and these are like $1.50. So go with these. The downside is they fully have to be cooked. They're not dehydrated, but if you cook on the fire like me, no problems. For breakfast, I do oatmeal. Other people do backpacker meals. Food has a lot of variability out on the river. I'm just telling you what I do. I just like the instant oats for breakfast. Dehydrated coffee, hot chocolate mix, that's super nice too. But, whatever. For lunch, I'll usually do like beef jerky, candies. I'll warn you that if you have chocolate, it will like melt and stuff. So I usually go with like, just any kind of hard candy or anything that's can't really get melty, like gummies or whatever. But yeah, anything that you don't want to cook for lunch. So beef jerky, nut mix. I do uncooked ramen noodles, and I sprinkle like 1/3 of the sauce packet over. Prison chips. I think it's fine for lunch. People make fun of me for it, but I think it's good. Candies are good. I will say that like there's other things I've heard for food, so people will do like hard cheeses and like summer sausages in tortillas. That's a classic one. If you Google like backpacker recipes and stuff, I don't really see anybody doing that on the river. I see more stuff like this. Food is the one area, though, I will say don't be a weight weenie on. One, bring enough food, bring an extra potato packet for dinner. I mean, you're probably only going to be on the river for like, 3 days, 2 nights. So like, this doesn't hardly weigh anything. And if you're hungry and tired and in a bad mood and unable to perform at this extremely high level demanded by these rivers, you'll wish that you carried in the weight of an extra, rice dinner. But really don't be a weight weenie, especially I will say on night 1. Freeze a steak and bring it in and cook it right over the fire, or freeze some hot dogs and steal the little mustard packets from the gas station. Having an actual meal that you can ball out with and like have actually good food on night 1 is a game changer. And the steak costs you £1.50, but like whatever, you had a steak and it's only a pound, right? You saved all your other weight by having a light sleeping bag. Food is the one place that I'll say is worth it, but just on night 1. I wouldn't bring a steak every night. Plus, the frozen steak will only stay good for night 1. It won't be good on night 2. But yeah, ball out on night 1. I mean, just anything that can basically be cooked by sticking it right over the fire. So steak, hot dogs, sausages, and then go super lightweight for breakfast, lunch, and all your other dinners. I've heard of people going as crazy as getting ice cream into the Middle Kings and stuff. So like there's room to have fun, The other thing is that if you are gonna, party a bit, and I don't actually see much partying out there, they make the little canned cocktails and stuff. Those are super nice. Or bring in a 5th of whiskey or something. But you're probably gonna be so tired you're gonna pass out without at 8 p.m. without needing to drink. Okay, the other thing that can be super, super nice is some type of electrolyte powder. So Gatorade powder, like these Noon tablets, these LMNTs, mix it yourself, whatever. But like I bring one of these per day and I try to make it at lunch or after lunch, or just before lunch if you're out there with Eric and starting at 6 a.m. These are a lifesaver. It's so hot and sunny out on a lot of these overnighters. You will get dehydrated. These make the hydration so much better. I can't recommend these enough. Even 2 per day. That's so light. Absolute lifesaver. All right. My last recommendation with your kayak gear is don't have gear like this that's in really bad shape with rips that you sewed together your astrals with dental floss and stuff. You want gear, it doesn't have to be brand new, but gear like this, especially with shoes, because if your shoes break on the middle of King's Hike or Portage in Fantasy or whatever, you're screwed. So just make sure that your gear is not on its last legs, that it's not about to rip or whatever. They typically say that like 1 kayak is good for 1 California summer if you're going hard. You'll have a brand new kayak at the beginning of the summer and it'll be cracked at the end of the summer. So just you don't need brand new gear, but just have gear that's in decent shape and not about to break. If it breaks on you in the middle of the woods, this isn't the Upper Yock, this isn't Gore, and especially shoes. I would be nervous about taking astrals into some of these big hikes unless they were like almost brand new, just because of their propensity to break. All right, so now we're on to mindset or motivation. This one is more important than the gear in my opinion, because I think it's easier to get it wrong and nobody talks about it. So I was so surprised. My first ever overnighter was Fantasy. I don't recommend that. See my training section, but you can do it. Not recommended though. And I was just unbelievably surprised with how hard these rivers are, how demanding they are. If you took the video, the Evan Garcia videos that you see of Fantasy, and you deleted every rapid that shows up in the video from the run, it would still be one of the best runs in the world. It would still be one of the hardest runs in the world. It would still be harder than your local Class 5 run, for 99% of most people's local Class 5 runs. If you live in the Stikine, not true, but these rivers are relentless. They have so many Class 5 rapids, and you will either have to scout them all because you'll probably be showing yourself down, or if someone is showing you down, that is better, but then you'll just be routed into them all. Like, I'll give you examples of some rapids that I was just routed into on Royal Gorge recently, where the beta was just like, on this one, right to left. Crazy. We just routed that shit. No. Flipped, it was nuts, but... And this one, the beta was, it's like 30 feet.
I like to approach it. Right.
Right.
So I'm gonna go right to the boulder at the top, too.
This is the 30-footer?
Yeah. You'll just get routed into these, no scouting, very, very little beta. Some of the boulder gardens, like here's some boulder gardens that I got routed through, absolutely zero beta, the beta was just like, yeah, turn around the corner and then it's stout. So like, and it's relentless. It's not like, you got to Great Falls where I'm from and you can kind of scout something forever, because you have to make downstream progress rapidly. These runs, like the first day of Dinky, it's 1.5 miles and it takes all day. They are like relentless. So, you have to be relatively quick with scouting. You can't spend as much time analyzing every little thing like that. You just have to trust, like, I know how to kayak. This is the line. And go. It definitely helps to watch the videos ahead of time. Not really to memorize all of the rapids and stuff, because one, unless you're a god with memory, you probably can't. Two, they're missing a lot of the rapids. But really to see what lines these people are taking, because a lot of these rapids, like Double Pothole, I think it's called on Dinky, like. The line might not be too obvious if you haven't seen a bunch of videos. So it frees up your mental capacity to not need to figure out which line to take on the biggest rapids, only to figure out how you're going to hit the line, if that makes sense. And that's the biggest thing in mindset, is that it's decision fatigue. For me, was the big one when I first started these kind of runs. It's the decision of, do I kayak this rapid or do I portage it? And they are dangerous rapids, and they are very hard, over and over and over again. Even if you're not running the big ones, like I said, even without the big ones, these are still like the hardest rivers in the world. So you need to try to eliminate as many decisions as possible. That will stop your brain from getting fatigued. So just know that, like, you'll probably go in, if you're like me and you're just kind of stepping up into these runs and you're not already, one of the best boaters in the world, you're probably going to portage all the big rapids. You're probably going to be amazed at the stoutness of the rapids that aren't on the videos. And it's relentless. It's not like, on the upper Blackwater between the rapids on the video, it's, class 4 boogie, on, the Royal Gorge between the rapids on the video, it's, the upper Blackwater. It's harder than the upper Blackwater, if that makes sense. There's just no other runs in the world that I've done that are remotely comparable. So just be ready to just all day, 24/7, extreme stouts, all day. And the other thing is that you're going to be doing this very tired. These runs are extremely physically demanding, which gets me into the training section. So number one would be kayak an overnight, as many overnights as you can before you go out and do, like Clark's Fork, Royal Gorge, Stikine, that kind of stuff. Even just overnighting your local run, even though you don't need to, it will just help get your setup dialed, get used to feel what it's like to maneuver a boat loaded with overnight gear, because it is definitely different. The modern high rocker boats help a ton in this regard compared to, like even a Mamba that I use, but still get your setup dialed. You figure out what works, you figure out what don't work, and it helps a lot. Even, if you live somewhere like at Great Falls, you cannot overnight Great Falls because it's 1 minute long. Do laps with your overnight gear. It will still help you figure out how to pack the boat, how it performs. You'll get a little bit used to what it's like to carry the loaded boat. So just do that as much as you can. As many overnighters as you can do, even if they're unnecessary. People on Great Falls, before they got to the Stikine, will train with loaded boats for like a month or two, just to know what it feels like. The second one would be like, if you can, just as with the rest of your kayaking, step up in terms of overnighters. Like the Black Canyon in Colorado would be a great first overnighter because, well, it has some absolutely massive, completely sieved out rapids that basically I haven't done. Most of the rest of the rapids are like fairly reasonable class 5. It's not like the Middle Kings where, it'll blow you away with how it's so much more stout than your local runs. It feels pretty reasonable. Then, you could go up to the Clark's Fork box, which is, definitely a step up, but will feel more reasonable. And then you could go South Merced, and then you could go Fantasy, But that being said, don't let it scare you. If you get invited on Fantasy, you're putting on next week and you don't have time. Like, these are the best runs in the world. Like, you got to do it. Just if you can step it up, do step it up. But realize that these are incredibly hard. I just can't stress that enough. And very dangerous. Like, there are a lot of sieves and stuff. People do it safely all the time, but just be ready. It's not like these giant rapids aren't being run because they are exceptionally safe. They're being run because they're the exceptionally best paddlers in the world. But they're safe enough to do for most people that have the skills to do it. The other thing would be your hiking, your physical fitness. So there's a lot of hiking involved. I mean, even a run like Dinky, which is barely considered to have a hike in, is like 2 miles and 1,500 vertical feet, like straight down. If you don't live somewhere where you have hiking, if you're not doing hiking, and Great Falls in West Virginia, we're not hiking here. We're just not hiking at all. The Great Falls hike does not count. It's peanuts compared to what's out there. You need to hike. You need to go get a backpack and load it up with water or rocks. Make your backpack 50, 60 pounds heavy and go hiking. And it's not as much about distance as it is about vertical feet. If you're hiking, a lot of vertical feet up, thousands of vertical feet with weight, that's the kind of training you need to be doing. When I used to live in Boulder, I would go load my backpack up with 50, 60 pounds worth of random crap, books, rocks, water, wood, whatever, just make it heavy. And then I would go hike Green Mountain after work once a week, twice a week, before work sometimes. And that's the kind of training you need to do. The other thing is most of these rivers aren't super high altitude, but they're not super low either. I think the upper Cherry Puddin is at 5,000 or 6,000 feet. Which if you're coming straight from sea level, because you're setting shuttle and, staying in Fresno, which, wouldn't recommend, but you're not going to be acclimatized. And if you're from the East Coast, that could actually be rough. And then especially things like the Middle Kings, where the height gets up to 12,000 feet-ish. If you're from the East Coast, you're going to get destroyed just by the altitude. So spend as much time hiking high altitude mountains ahead of time as you can. If you're driving out, if you're doing the big tour, it's worth climbing some mountains in Colorado, climbing 14ers, 13ers in Idaho, whatever you got, 12,000 foot mountains ideally, do a couple of them. I mean, one for the physical training and two for the acclimatization. And especially on the Middle Kings, I would recommend sleeping at the Puddin. Again, if you have the time for a couple of, at least a night or two before you do the hike, just to help with the acclimatization. Again, you can't win them all. You can't do all this training, but especially if you're out west, you really have no excuse for not, doing a ton of hiking mountains. You're probably backcountry skiing all winter. That's another good way, but just come in with good hiking shape. If you're on the East Coast, do stairs, hike the hills, behind your house, do whatever you can, put weight on your back and go hiking, because it will make your trip so much better if you're in shape for these things, But with all that being said, I don't mean to scare people off. These are the best runs in the world. You can, I wasn't hardly hiking anything before I did it. I didn't have any training. I'd never done an overnighter before. I'd never paddled a loaded boat. I'd never tested my overnight setup, and I made it, I made it down Fantasy and I had a good time. And, you can learn this stuff if you have friends. I had great friends that helped me. So you can do it, this is the ideal training method. And then also paddle, just be ready to paddle tired. You'll be really tired on these rivers. On the Middle Kings, there were some nights where I went to bed and woke up in the middle of the night thinking I had the flu, because I was just so tired. I didn't have the flu. I was just that tired. So just be ready to be tired. Maybe this betrays that I'm a wimp, and guys that are doing this stuff all the time have an easy time with this. But this is just my experience. You do need to prepare. It's not like if you're just going out and going to run the green or the Toxaway and you don't really need to prepare. I think you do need to prepare if you want to have the ultimate best experience on these runs. But get out there, have a good time. It really doesn't get any better than that. And this is all just my opinion. There are people that vehemently disagree. Darren McCoy will disagree with me on food. So for some random tips now, Darren McCoy is basically, his website is the unofficial California guidebook. Before you're going to do one of his runs in California, look up his page and read his trip report. There was good beta. For example, he has very good directions for the Dinky shuttle. He has pictures of rapids. He has, descriptions and everything. He even lists the overnighters by his perceived difficulty so you can, you know, step it up if you're into that kind of thing. He tells you about the gear he uses, and he's you know, an incredible overnight kayaker. He's way better than me, so I would take his advice. That being said, when you're reading his descriptions, just know that he is probably a much better kayaker than you are too. You know, just know that like these guys out there that are overnight legends are just unbelievable. You know, truly incredible overnight kayakers, the likes of which I couldn't have imagined when I started. For flows in California, AW is pretty useless. AW is pretty useless with river descriptions in California for most of the overnighters. You know, Dream Flows has the flow.